Welcome to Strategy Chronicles, the rules of history you never knew, the secret arithmetic of power. We lay them on the strategy table. In 1799, a young general returned from Egypt. He had abandoned his army, crossed the Mediterranean in secret, and arrived in a France that no longer wanted revolution. It wanted order. The people were exhausted. The old kings were dead, but the throne was empty. And Napoleon Bonaparte understood one thing better than anyone else. Power is not inherited, it is constructed, one strategic choice at a time. This is the rise from nothing. In 1793, a 24-year-old artillery officer named Napoleon Bonaparte made a strategic choice that would redefine personal branding in warfare. At the siege of Toulon, he did not wait for orders. He volunteered. Toulon was a royalist stronghold held by the British. The Revolutionary Army had failed to retake it. Napoleon, technically a junior officer, proposed a plan to capture the fortifications from the rear. It worked. Within hours, the British fleet withdrew. Napoleon was promoted to brigadier general. But the siege was not his real victory. His real victory was making sure Paris knew who had won it. He wrote detailed reports. He cultivated journalists. He made himself visible to the Committee of Public Safety at a time when generals were being guillotined for failure. 5 years later, in Italy, he perfected the system. Before every battle, he wrote letters to his soldiers. After every victory, he wrote letters to Paris. These were not military reports. They were propaganda, designed to be printed in newspapers, read in salons, remembered by the public. Napoleon understood what few generals did. War is fought on two fronts, the battlefield and the mind of the nation. He won both. By 1797, he was the most famous man in France, not because he was the most talented general, because he was the most visible. In 1798, Napoleon sailed for Egypt with 40,000 men and a fleet of scientists. Officially, he was cutting British trade routes to India. Unofficially, he was escaping a France where his fame had peaked and his political future had stalled. Egypt was not a conquest, it was a career move. The campaign began brilliantly. The pyramids were behind him, Cairo was his. But the British Admiral Nelson destroyed his fleet at the Nile. Napoleon was stranded, 3,000 miles from France, with no way home and no reinforcements coming. This is where strategy becomes psychology. Most generals would have dug in. Napoleon looked at the calendar. France was in chaos again. The Directory was collapsing, and he saw his window. He abandoned his army in the dead of night, took 2 frigates, crossed the Mediterranean in secret, evading British patrols, arrived in France not as a defeated general, but as a man who had chosen his moment. In November 1799, he struck the coup of 18 Brumaire, not with soldiers in the streets, with timing. The government was paralyzed, the legislators were confused, and Napoleon, who had spent years learning how to be seen, walked into the room and took what was left. He did not seize power. He stepped into a vacuum that he had calculated would open. The first consul, at 30 years old. The man who had left France to find glory returned to find a throne. The road to Austerlitz passed through France. But Napoleon's greatest victory was not on the battlefield. It was inside the enemy's mind. Information asymmetry, apparent weakness, tactical deception. In the next episode, you will see how Napoleon fooled the world at Austerlitz. Subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, drop a comment. Do you think Napoleon was truly a genius or just a brilliant actor? Don't forget to like. The continuation of this series depends on your support.